level as well. But Mr. Wujangi, I look at the numbers and the statistical service tells me that the cultural sector is growing. Whether COVID or no COVID, people have to eat. Does it appear that when it comes to the agric space, they've been immune to this COVID?
Thank you. So I'll just use that as an opportunity to talk about what we went through, especially in regards to COVID-19. So we are an integrated agribusiness, but we currently add value to yam. So we convert it into yam chips, yam slices, and yam flour. So what happened was that immediately we had the opportunity or the advantage of the initial announcement. So the announcement that gave a pre-information to the public that we were going to have a lockdown or a shutdown actually enabled people to do a lot of buying. So it got us excited, and we had an increase in demand. And then the lockdown kicked in and everything just slowed because there was very little movement. You can't really go to many of the shops and all that. And then after the lift, demand started increasing again. So for us, it's been kind of topsy-turvy when it comes to demand and supply. But one of the key things as well that we also went through had got to do with the supply part. Fortunately for us, we grow the yam that we use. And the main reason is because we want to have visibility on the entire supply chain. So with regards to that aspect, in being able to get our yam tubers, it wasn't that difficult to be able to source the yam because we had the yam. The difficulty was in getting the yam to Accra because we are currently doing the value addition in Accra to test the markets and then as part of the product development phase. And that is something we've been doing for about 3 to 4 years now. And fortunately, that actually worked to our advantage because getting the yam here was at the time, it was a bit difficult because one, truckers were not moving because they didn't want to get into areas where there was a lockdown because there was this perception of you could go there and get infected. The second thing also had to do with the fact that in the various districts, there was also a lot of measures that had been put in place. So for instance, from the Kwantano district, when you leave the district and you come back, they want you to go into isolation. And that's one thing that the drivers didn't want to do. The third thing had to do with the number of trucks available. Now, the number of people who would want to come are very few. So what that means is that you have a greater demand for transportation services, but the supply of the transportation service is very low. So what that did was it shot the price of transportation of the yam tubers to Accra. And that was where we had a major challenge because at some point in time, I actually had to take off from Accra because fortunately I had a permit to be able to enable me to move around. So we had to move from Accra only to get to Peki and get to know that they finally got a truck which was charging almost double the amount, but they had been able to put it back, so we came back. So that's what SAY does. So in terms of staffing, because of the initial announcement, 3 of our staff left Accra and went back to their villages. Why? Because they were also afraid to be locked up in one place, and that was their view. They don't want to be kept in one place and and kind of restricted movement. So we had to now find out, and fortunately, a lot of us also know what is entailed in the processing. So we now had to suit up and get working. Our operational costs also increased as a result because as you're bringing the yams into town, you are paying more for it. And then also we couldn't allow our staff to go by public transport again. So we'd have to go pick them, transport them to the processing unit. After that, take them back, and it happens almost every time we had to do the production. So that's in general what the kind of effects that we, for instance, went through. But in terms of sales, at least before then, at least we had about 60 to 70% increase in demand. And then later it's slumped a bit. But after COVID-19, we've had sorry, after the lockdown, probably a prophecy. After the lockdown, we've had a steady increase, and truthfully, it's currently better than pre-COVID times.
So what I'm getting from you people is that for those in the trade business and even agribusiness as well, yes, of course, demand picked up, but also cost as well went up. Was there any balancing effect as well?
Yeah, so at that point in time also, it's difficult. You cannot increase your prices because it's a humanitarian situation that you find yourself in. So you cannot increase your prices, so you definitely need to find a way of balancing your expenditure lines. Probably there are certain things that you would have normally done that you'd have to cut back on, and then probably find other ways of doing them. And that's one of the things that also happened. But fortunately for us, our packaging is, we're able to source it locally. So our vacuum bags, we still had access to the vacuum bags, and we didn't really have that much of a challenge in terms of packaging. But that's also another area that probably for businesses, because when you look at the packaging costs for the various agribusinesses which are coming up now, packaging cost is very high, and it's mainly because you have to meet certain minimum order quantities. You have to buy molds for each color, for each color of your packaging material, and it makes it so expensive. If you are an agribusiness, an SME, and you have a minimum order quantity of about 20, 30, 50,000 pieces of packaging material, then
For your business to survive the next 10 years? Or your model will survive the next 10 years?
Yes, we will not just survive, but we will thrive. And the reason why I say that is that one of the key things that helped us in this time is the fact that we have visibility on our supply chain. We had actually, right from the onset, disintegrated and built the network of our supply chain. So, as a matter of fact, we have even taken care of the production as of now. We're going to be using an outgrower model, which is going to ensure that we rope in the communities within which we operate, so that they can supply, but on our terms. Because a lot of the time we want to believe that, we are going out to help people, we are helping this one do that, but we sometimes forget the fact that we are running businesses. And if you're running a business, there are different principles that govern it. It is different from a charity. So, and that's one of the things that I think worked for us, the fact that we have visibility on our supply chain. But like my senior fellow made mention of, to be able to develop businesses to be global, to be conglomerates, to be multinationals, it requires a conscious effort, to which, sadly, I don't see that happening in Ghana. I don't see any institution being able to give me data that I would value. Because majority of the data that is given, trust me, I sometimes get onto, for instance, street platforms and all that. It's about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I don't see any country that can develop effectively and efficiently and make all the strides that we're talking about without data. And that is one thing. And the other part of it also is that we seem to have an influx of awards. Almost everywhere you go, there's an award this, award that, and then you hear this one, an incubation center, that incubation, and then you see agri-tech, that's, and I keep wondering, look, technology is an enabler. If your systems and your practices, your standards, everything is not working, technology is just going to make rubbish of everything that you have done. Pardon my language, but it's a fact. So I think that there's a lot that we need to do to be able to build businesses effectively. And that is why I actually believe that when you look at what MBSSI is doing with the various advisory services that they provide at the various districts and all that, there's a very big disconnect. Because as a matter of fact, I don't think I can walk into any of these offices and they'll be able to tell me what is happening in another district, even though they may be having a representative there.
Even their own district, the data is not correct.
You know, so as a matter of fact, if we're going to be able to develop ourselves and develop businesses to be like the Nestle's, to be like the Toyotas and all that, it requires a conscious, concerted effort to be able to do that.